I see there's a mazel tov to Patrice on the new baby. Mazel tov. So exciting. Chodesh tov, and I say that in every sense of the words, that in Mirza Hashem, this should really be a very wonderful month for all of the Jewish people and really everyone in the world. We could all use a Chodesh tov. It is such a schus to come and learn together. And as my husband had mentioned, this year on Rosh Hashanah, and when was it? When you gave your
Shabbos Shuvah.
The Shabbos Shuvah drasha, right? That when Rosh Hashanah comes out on a Shabbos, so that's like an opportunity where Shabbos really like keeps us, and that is a schus for us as people. And I think that it's a great opportunity to do some real chazara, or for some of us, it's not as much chazara since there's so much when it comes to Hilchos Shabbos. And I want to thank Orit Zarnist for organizing all this, and Mickey Gottlieb, you guys are amazing. And for all of the women who come to learn, it's really a schus to see everyone. And thank you for all your questions. It's schus to learn together.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Markowitz. Really appreciate that. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Orit. Thank you, Mickey. And thank you everybody for coming on, and for those especially for asking and sending in all those questions. Very exciting for me. This is a very special opportunity. This is our 10th year in Fair Lawn in Shomrei Torah. This is the first time I'm speaking in this venue. I've never spoken. It's taken COVID for me to speak at the Sisterhood Rosh Chodesh here. Baruch Hashem.
So, I think to be one of my favorite parts of the shul. I said from the beginning, I love that this is the time where everyone gets together.
And nobody's sleeping in our house,
Usually
Sometimes. We have aspirational bedtimes.
Rabbi, you're muted. Unmute yourself.
Thank you. I believe that was Myrna. Thank you, Myrna. Wanted to let everybody know I'm going to be looking into the chat, and so is Orit, who's helping me out with that. So if there are any other questions that do come up in the course of our discussion, I am here and happy to discuss. I'll try to finish a topic and then look at the box after that to not get distracted, but then I'll go back to whatever issues I may have either glanced over or need further clarification afterwards. Shabbos for me is something that, especially during the past 10 months, has really been this lighthouse. And I mean that very literally, a lighthouse. You have the boats that are lost at sea, and all they could see, the way that they get home and the way they stay connected, is by seeing that light at the end, seeing that big light, and they follow that light. And our days and our weeks have become very, very intense and crazy for so many different reasons. Some pandemic related, others related to what is going on in our country. And Shabbos has been this beacon and this way to really close ourselves off to the world and really focus on what is significant, what is important, and what our priorities and values are in our lives. And it's been, the hardest part is not having guests over, but the most special part about the pandemic is really having Shabbos, and everything shuts off, comes to a halt, and you're able to just sing together, be together, and in its own unique way, Shabbos really, I feel, has kept us throughout this very, very trying time. Most of the questions that I received were related to heating up food on Shabbos. So we're going to, in fact, a few people said just all of those, check all the boxes about heating food. So I'm gonna first go through all of that, and then we'll go through Friday night going into Shabbos day. We'll discuss different appliances and the principles and halachos that are relegating that are in the background of all of those issues. If we have more time, we'll discuss the other issues. If we don't, again, I'm on as long as you want to stay on, but again, at a certain point, we need to go to sleep. And then we can either have a second session or we can just hash them all out tonight. So when it comes to Shabbos, we have one overarching halacha, which is called bishul. We can't cook on Shabbos. There's a prohibition to bring something from its raw state to its cooked state on Shabbos itself. That is one of the 39 prohibitions, the 39 malachos on Shabbos. But this is something that is so common and perhaps so easy to violate, that the rabbis and Shabbos and food is such a central part of Judaism, and especially our Shabbos, that the rabbis made many different protections around this halacha to protect us from violating this halacha. So the first one is this concept called shihiyah. What is shihiyah? Shihiyah says that I can't technically, what can I do? I can leave a flame on Shabbos. I can leave a flame on before Shabbos. I can put my raw food in a pot, and I'll come home. I'll run home right before, 5 minutes before Shabbos. I'll jump into the shower and I'll put my food on the pot. And then by the time, an hour or two later, the food's ready. That's a great idea. So the rabbi said that might cause us to do other things. So leaving uncooked food on an open flame before Shabbos is prohibited under the halacha of shihiyah. Shihiyah is an Aramaic word which literally means to wait, or in this case, to hold it on the fire. Why is this asur? What's the prohibition? What's related? What's the background of this? So the rabbis say, Shema yichata b'gechalim. Back in the day, we didn't have ovens like we have today. We had something called a tanur or a kirayim, where there was coals that were at the bottom of the pot, and they used those coals to heat up before Shabbos. And there was a fear that if you had uncooked food on the top of the pot, what were you going to do? If the food wasn't cooking quick enough, you would stoke the coals. Yechata b'gechalim, you would stoke the coals, and you would come to violate a prohibition. What prohibition would you come to violate? So either some say the malacha of bishul, cooking, or others say you'd come to violate the malacha of havara, which means to light a fire, kindle a fire on Shabbos. Why is this significant for us? Because we're going to see how we can circumvent those concerns, and that thus permitting us to do certain things on Shabbos by leaving food on fires that are covered. So how do we do this? Number one is, what is the when we say something it can't be cooked, it's raw, what is that? When does something become cooked on Shabbos? At what moment does something say, oh, now this is considered cooked and I could leave it on a fire on Shabbos, right? What is that state? Where is that chulent? How much does it need to be cooked? So it's actually a machlokes in the Gemara between a rabbi called Hananya. He actually is not called Rav Hananya. He's just called Hananya, and the Chachamim. Hananya, we generally follow this opinion of Hananya, who says it needs to be a third cooked. It's a little bit difficult to figure out, what does it mean a third cooked? Is that based on time? Does that mean I eyeball it? Does that mean I stick my fork into it and I see it? But we can, based on many people here are much more seasoned than I am in the kitchen, and they can, if it's X amount of time cooked and it needs, 3 times that, it's a third cooked. That would be enough time. That's number one. So if something is a third cooked, then already we can see you can violate or you can circumvent this issue of shihiyah. And secondly, the other issue is you can't leave something on an open flame. So what would you need to do? You would need to do 2 things. This was the machlokas between 2 great rabbis in the 20th century, between Moshe Feinstein and Rav Aaron Kotler, as to, in our modern ovens, when we say you can't stoke the coals, so what does it mean today to cover coals? How does that translate in the 21st century kitchen to stoke coals? Rav Moshe Feinstein said, that means to cover a fire, right? So Rav Moshe Feinstein said, that's why we have blechs. And I actually would be curious to know how many people today still use a blech. I know there are some questions about blechs. We'll get to it. But I'm just curious to know, in terms of safety, how many people still use a blech? So Rav Moshe said you need to cover with the fire. Rav Aaron Kotler, the great Lakewood Rosh Yeshiva, the founder of the Lakewood Yeshiva, He says covering the fire is really not the issue. The real issue is covering the knobs, because that's really where you turn that knob and you're stoking the coals. You're raising the flame and lowering the flame. Moshe quotes of our Cutler, and he says ultimately the way to avoid shihiyah would be you should do both. You should cover the flame and you should cover the knobs. So they sell today, if you were using a blech and leaving your food on the blech from before Shabbos, that is permitted. And they sell today these blechs that have like a 90-degree, there's a plastic sheet of it's a metal sheet, and then there's like a piece, a drop-down piece, like a lip that goes down and covers the knobs too. If you don't have that, you can just get some tin foil and cover the knobs separately on their own, and that would be enough, and you'd achieve their garuf ve'katam. Why is that important? For a few different halachos. Number one, we'll go to the cholent pot. So you have a cholent pot, you want to make cholent before Shabbos. So many people put up the cholent early on Shabbos morning, and when they put the cholent up early on Friday morning, they put it up with enough time that already when you come home from work, the kids come home off the bus, it smells great in the house, and you can have chapsim cholent before Shabbos. That was my family, Sarah's family too. We ate the cholent. Some people get the cholent on Friday night. We ate the cholent, got some cholent before Shabbos. Don't eat too much. Then they're running the risk of running out of cholent. God forbid, Shabbos morning. But that's what some people do. So on what do you need to do to avoid or alleviate these issues? So one should definitely cover the knobs of the cholent pot. That again, be creative there. It could be with a sticker, with something like a piece of tape. It also could be with a piece of foil, and that you can cover the knobs. If you forgot to cover the knobs on Shabbos and you see Friday night, it's okay. The food's still kosher. And again, Ramosha says that's not necessary, Maker Hadin, but one can then on Friday night cover the knobs. Again, you can't cut the foil on Shabbos, but if you had pre-cut foil, that you could do that on Shabbos, that would be okay. Secondly, when it comes to, once we're on crock pots, there's a second issue regarding making, an issue, a halacha that comes up from before Shabbos onto Shabbos, and that's called hatmana. Hatmana is something really these days we don't have, doesn't play itself out in many areas. Hatmana is covering a food on all four sides and then putting it in a place where it can be mosif hevel, more heat can go into it and it can continue to cook on Shabbos since it is insulated all over. We don't really have this today. There are very many qualifications of this which make it irrelevant in many areas of halacha, practical halacha in our kitchen. One area where it's of debate is a cholent pot. A cholent pot is covered on all sides, the bottom and the sides, but not on top. So Rav Moshe Feinstein said that's not hatmana since it's not covered on top. So you don't need to do anything to alleviate this issue. However, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, one of the Gedolim from Eretz Yisrael, Shlomo Zalman died in 1995. Apparently, this was his last psak before he passed away. He said that this cholent pot, even though it's open on top, it has a cover, but it's open on top, there's no heating element on top, there is an issue of hatmana. Someone actually asked this question late last night, and what would you need to do to avoid this issue? So very, very simple. You need to put something between the heating element and the crock pot to make a separation. So some Sfarim write, all you need to do is put some pennies. Pennies are very, very thin. It's safe. You put them there, and already now there's a separation between the crock pot and the heating element. We, the Markowitzes, we don't use the pennies. we put foil balls. We just put a few different foil balls. We wrap them up and put them under there to address this psak or Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Again, it's a chumrah. It's a stringency of Shlomo Zalman. There's actually a wild story about this, that after Shlomo Zalman came out with this psak, with Aaron Lichtenstein Zatzal, Aaron Lichtenstein did not follow this. It was a big discussion whether you should follow this chumrah of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach or not. Rav Lichtenstein did not that Shabbos after he passed away, after Shlomo Zalman passed away, and his crock pot stopped working. Whoa. If you know Rav Aaron Lichtenstein, it's not a Rav Lichtenstein-esque type of story that he would necessarily say. And other Rabbanim said similar stories to that. Be that as it may, whether yes or no, it is a good chumrah to take to do that before Shabbos. If one cannot, or one forgot, the food is still kosher. The chillin pot is still good. On this topic, something that is really common, especially in our home, is we're running. And sometimes I forgot to make the chillin. I completely forgot to make the chillin. And now it's going to be Shabbos. What do I do? Is there anything that I could do? Chillin, it's a mitzvah. My kids are going to be, what's going to happen? So there is a halacha in the Gemara. The Gemara said, if you put a kidra chaisa, if you put a raw piece of meat into the chillint right before Shabbos, then you're allowed to turn the crock pot on. You can cook the food on a covered flame before Shabbos, crock pot. Why is that? We're not afraid you're going to stoke the coals. There's no concern because the food can't be cooked any faster. It's not going to be used for the Friday night meal no matter what. It's not going to be cooked within a half hour, an hour. That's not possible. It will only be cooked the next day. There's a minority of poskim today. Maybe some of you have heard this in seminary from learning at a different time, who say it's problematic. But the majority of the poskim today say with our crock pots today, it's mutter, and some did it l'chachila, made chillint in this form before Shabbos. Now one has to be careful. It doesn't have to be literally right before I light candles. If you do that right before you light candles, many of us may end up forgetting. So it could be done within 25 minutes before Shabbos is okay. Also, by the time the water gets heated up, and by the time that's still considered completely raw before Shabbos to be okay. To do it earlier than that, like an hour, would then put us into this category of the Hanania opinion we mentioned earlier about 1/3 cooked. It would be from it's not cooked enough, and it's not zero. So it would be in this zone where we'd say that is shehiyah midrabanan, and that would be a serious issue. Therefore, kidra chaisa would be mutter. Somebody asked, "What about my Shabbos urn? Does this apply to my urn? Can I? There's a mitzvah to have children on Shabbos, but there's a greater mitzvah, and maybe it's sakanas nefashos if we didn't have hot coffee on Shabbos." That's a joke. I mean, to some of us, that's a joke. Okay, but can I do this to the water on Shabbos? Is that okay too? So the answer is no. That this heter only applies to raw meat, and then obviously the bones and whatever the beans and whatever you put in, it all becomes mutter because of the raw meat, but not water, because water can cook very, very fast. This heter, this leniency of kidra chaisa would not apply in this situation. A hot water urn should be put on, should be filled up earlier. I can't tell you a time, a few hours before Shabbos. It should be on one's list, preparing for Shabbos much earlier, because this could be an issue regarding cooking on Shabbos, the violation of shehiyah. I'm going to stop here for a moment. If there are questions about this, anything I just mentioned, I'll take them now, but I will then continue with Shabbos day. Good? Good.
So,
okay.
Wait, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Carol. Carol Weissman, go ahead.
So I line my pot with foil. Because instead of the balls, I put a whole piece of foil in between. Is that good?
Oh, you put like a whole piece of foil in between the element and that. Yeah, that should be fine too.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah, that should be fine too. Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now Friday night, one other thing that is more of a contemporary new issue in the past, I would say 15 to 20 years. So Yedida, with hot water, does it make a difference whether if it's half filled or boiled already? Meaning, could you add more if it's half filled? And if it's Yedida, can you clarify your question? Are you saying if it's half?
If it's already half filled and half boiled, but then you want to add more, like you're afraid you don't have enough water, would that make a difference, or it's still not okay?
One spouse gets water, the other one doesn't. That's also dangerous. Yeah. So I think you have to know your hot water urn. You have to know whether that's that helps. A little bit of water, probably one more cup, is going to be fine. It's going to be cooked automatically when it goes in. How much more afterwards? That really depends on the hot water urn. I would say we have two. We have now two because we depends on guests. If we have guests, not in the past 10 months, but we have two. One of them cooks really, really fast, and the other one doesn't. So I'd say it depends on the type of urn that you have. Why do you have to cover the stove knobs? That was the opinion of Rav Aaron Cutler that felt that if you're going to use the blech on Shabbos and you're going to use that, then you need to cover the knobs is really the main part. That's where the flames goes up and down from there. That's why you need to cover the knobs.
In many cases, you can pull the knobs off and just pull them off, and then you can't control it.
Yeah, that's great too. That would
Pull
work
them
too.
off and throw them in a drawer.
Yeah. As long as you're not concerned that your kids are going to take them and throw them around the house. Yes, that would be, Myrna. Yeah, that's another good one. If you want to pull them off and therefore it's not messy in the kitchen, that's a great idea too. That is good. So now many have ovens that have a Shabbos mode. Shabbos mode is very deceiving. Good. Thank you, Sarah. It's deceiving. Shabbos mode really means Yontif mode. That's really what it was made for. It was made for, so GE and whatever, all the other companies, they really did a disservice to us, to Klal Yisrael, by calling it Shabbos mode, because really it's meant for Yontif, when you can cook raw food to make it cooked on Shabbos. That and Yontif, that's really what it's for. But recently, I got this question, I would say, I don't know why, but it came up over these past Yom Tovim a bunch of times, where on Friday night, can I keep Shabbos mode on? Some ovens, you can turn Shabbos mode on and then put a timer on where it shuts off like a few hours later. So what the question that came up was, I leave my food in the oven from before Shabbos. I put it on, whatever you put it on, 200, 350, doesn't make a difference. But we put it all in before Shabbos. That's the key point here, before Shabbos. And when I open the oven, so it's on this Shabbos mode, which means that the temperature doesn't change in the oven because I opened it. That's what Shabbos mode does. And can I remove the food? So the appetizer is meatballs. I know meatballs is a bad example because you usually do it in pot, but okay, you take those out and then you do the main course. You close the oven. Main course is the rice and the schnitzel and the chicken and the meat. Can I do that piecemeal if you leave everything on Shabbos mode? The answer is yes. That is permitted. That is permitted to do. You could leave the food in the oven on Shabbos mode. And the key point is here, as long as it's on Shabbos mode, you can take things out as you want, but not put things back. Putting things back would be an issue of Nesina L'Chachila, which we'll mention very, very shortly. If one just leaves them in the oven themselves, because sometimes the oven gets so hot from before Shabbos, and sometimes that's enough within itself to keep the food warm, one needs to be careful of something it's a halachic issue, but it's a practical halachic issue. And that is the light. You have to either make sure to turn off the light before Shabbos or keep the light on. Otherwise, it's automatically going to go on, and that's going to be a serious psik resha. A psik resha is whenever I do X, Y always happens, and Y is a malacha, and that would be a big problem. So one, again, on our Shabbos list, maybe we should make this. The Sisterhood could hand this out. A Sisterhood Shomrei Torah Shabbos checklist. Fill up the hot water, we're good. Make sure the light is on or off in the oven. So these are things that we have to remember when we are preparing for Shabbos. And it doesn't only have to be on you. Get your husbands involved and help make sure if you have a husband, get him involved, get somebody involved. It doesn't always have to be on you to do all of this on your own. Okay. Is a plastic crock pot.
Wait, I have a question on that. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Karen. Yeah.
Your Shabbos mode is on, and then you time it so it goes. Does it make a difference? You can leave things in. You can take out one thing at a time, correct? Does it matter if the oven is still on?
No, it's okay.
I thought it had to be off, so you don't have to take everything out once you open it, if it's still on.
Yeah, that's what I'll be honest, that's what I thought. I spoke to a few different poskim about this to confirm that that's the general, that is the psak, yeah.
So even if it's still on, you could take out one thing at a time.
On Shabbos mode.
On Shabbos mode. But it's still on. It's still, the oven is on.
Yeah.
You're saying you can't put it back.
The chap
I'm
is.
not putting back. I'm talking about my soup and my meatballs and my rice are in there. So first I can take my soup out and it's still on 200 or 350 or whatever.
Yeah.
I take out my soup and close the door. I can take out the meatballs and close the door. I don't have to take it all out at once if it's on.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
That wasn't my understanding either, based upon something from the CRC, because in Shabbos mode, let's say you have it on at 200. When you open that door, once you close it, that oven is, when you open it, the oven will get cooler because you're letting the hot air escape.
So on Shabbos
therefore
mode,
it will go back on again.
so Myrna, on Shabbos mode, that avoids that issue. It's not your action that's, making sure the temperature stays at whatever you set it at, 200, 250, 350. It's not you doing it. It does it automatically set on a random timer internally within the oven itself. And since it's not you doing it, if it wasn't on Shabbos mode, then that's you, by you opening the oven, the cold air, whatever,
Right, yeah.
goes in, and that flips the cause of the thermometer to go up and down. That's an issue. That's grumma, and we can't create grumma on Shabbos. But when it's on Shabbos, that doesn't happen.
So you're saying if you left the oven on
Yeah.
Shabbos, so let's say you left the oven on, and then you want to take your food out. Are you allowed to take your food out? And then but according to what we're saying, you have to take it all out at one time. That's what you said before.
Yeah, if the oven was left on, stam, yeah.
That's what you said before.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Okay.
Oh, and wait, so if you forget, it's different. If you just leave it on, like all Shabbos, then you can't. You just have to take it all out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, okay.
So good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great
Okay.
question.
Faye, is a plastic crock pot bag sufficient to make a separation with the heating element, or should it be metal? The plastic crock pot bag. No. Yeah, that's not enough within itself, because that's in the food component. That's not separating the heating element from the ceramic pot. So you need something else. That something else could be different things. It depends on all those things are good, whatever the separation is. Again, the Rabbi Riberyad in his book, I think he writes pennies. We use foil bowls. Some people use pebbles. Whatever you feel comfortable with, they're all good. Okay, let's go to Shabbos morning. Actually, Friday night. Friday night, the meal is over, and you're like, you know what? It's a long Friday night. The cholent smells really good. I can go for some good cholent right now. So nobody's around, This may be the wrong crowd over here, but we can go for some cholent. So how do I do this? How can I do this? So there are 5 conditions that we need to ensure to do this halachically appropriate. This is called hachzara in the Gemara, in halacha. Number 1, you have to make sure that the cholent is fully cooked. So if you're the person that put the food on the oven, put the cholent in the crock pot, right before Shabbos started, so that might not be, the food's probably not going to be fully cooked. Number one. Number two, it needs to be on a covered flame. So that's, again, either the flame, the knob itself. Number three, when you take the food off of the pot, number three is the food can't cool down in that time. Number 4 and 5 are the more practical ones. Number 4 is you have to hold onto it. So you take the cholent, you take the crock pot off of the off out of the thing. You hold it in your. It has to be odo biyado. Odo biyado doesn't mean you have to hold it literally in your hands in the air, like you'd like be risking your life. Like you have one hand in this with a bowl, and where's everything going? No, you're allowed to put it down on the counter, but you should keep a hand on it when you put it on the counter. That would be sufficient as long as you have a hand on it on the counter. And number 5 is daito lachsor. One has to have in mind that when I'm taking it out, I have to put it on. Mind you, that when you take it off and if you find that the food is not fully cooked, we would not be permitted to put it back on, because then you would be creating a bishul situation, a cooking situation on Shabbos. In terms of the last two, again, fully cooked, covered fire, can cool down. The last two are holding it in your hand and having in mind to put it back. The halacha l'maaseh, practically, if one did one and not the other of the last two, meaning they let go of it by accident, but they still had in mind to put it back, b'di eved, you would be allowed to still put the cholent back onto the heating element. That would be permitted. A common question that also does come up is I smell the cholent Friday, and I wake up at 11 o'clock, and the cholent smells. I feel like it's going to burn. I'm sensing that. So can I do something? So there are two things that you could do. Number one is I'm sensing it's going to burn, so I just want to leave it on a lower flame. So you could take the cholent off of the cholent pot, and you could move it to the plata, or you could move it to the crock pot. To the blech. That's number one. You can move it to the blech. You can't put it above the flame. You could put it further away, but you could put it there, and you can keep it warm. That's number one. Let's say you feel it's burning because it needs more hot water. What do you do in that situation? So you take the ideal thing to do. There's plan A here and there's plan B. The ideal thing to do here, if you feel like your crock pot is going to dry out, is you take the crock pot out and you walk over to your urn. And now here, you want to be concerned that you don't make your urn fleishiks and you don't make your urn chametz. So what do you do? You do, if you can, manipulate your hot water in a situation where you can push down on that pump or whatever you have or pull up that lever, and the hot water can come down straight into the crock pot, but with a little bit of a distance where the steam does not go straight into the faucet of the urn. And that would be permitted since that's boiling hot water, and it's a kli rishon and a kli rishon, that would be completely okay. If you're unable to do that, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach has a kula. I gave you a chumrah of his earlier. Here's a leniency of his, where he says you can fill up a cup. You can fill up a cup with hot water, like a mug, styrofoam cup. Take the cholent pot off. Take that cup, pour it into the cholent pot, and then put the cholent pot back on the crock pot. So there is the ideal way to do it is to pour it directly in. If you're unable to do that, you're concerned for your safety, because if you're doing that alone, that is a little bit, you have to be concerned for your safety. And then you could otherwise put it, again, hold it in one hand, fill up the hot water, put the hot water in the full cup, and that would be sufficient to ensure, that you save your cholent for Shabbos. Okay, so moving right along to, so last point on cholent is why can't I just, my cholent's fully cooked. Why can't I just take a spoon and, scoop out the cholent from the cholent pot that's on the thing? Why is that not okay? What's the problem? What's the problem with that? So it is a problem. That's called Hagasa. Where does the Hagasa come from? It's a big discussion. It comes from one of the Rishonim, the Ashkenazi Rishonim, or Zarua. He writes, Hagasa, there's a concern that if one would move food, when the food is on the flame, which we consider the heating element of flame, then you might be expediting the cooking process of the cholent, which would be problematic. Therefore, even if it's fully cooked, the chumrah is, even when the food's fully cooked, we still don't do that. And that's why it would be prohibited over here. The similar, just like you could do this to your cholent pot and take it off, put it back on, we, in the Markowitz household, we do this to soup. We take the soup from on the flame before Shabbos, we leave it on the plata throughout Shabbos, so we can have some nice hot soup on Shabbos morning. Let's get to Shabbos morning right now. So we're moving away from Shehiyah, Hachzara, and Hatzmana, and we move into something called Nesina Lichatchila. How do I take food out of the fridge and put it onto my onto a heating element? How is that permitted? So we have 3 different types. Tell me if there are more. If there are more, I'm happy to discuss those too. Actually, 4 different types of heating elements. I already added one. Number 1, you have a blech. Number 2, you have a plata. Plata is a hot plate. Number 3, you have on top of your cholent pot or on top of your hot water urn. And number 4 is a warming drawer, which is a newer invention, I would say the last 20, 25 years, right? So you have all 4 of these. So you have 2 overriding principles that we need to address. One is that Chazal said, the rabbi said, we can't do anything when you want to heat up food that looks like cooking. It's called mechzi kemevashel. Therefore, one is not allowed to put, if you leave your oven on, like we mentioned Shabbos mode, you can't put the food back into the oven, even though that's the cleanest and most easiest way to do that, because that looks like cooking. That's the way you normally cook before, for the rest of the week. So that action within itself is prohibited on Shabbos day itself. So good. So let's take each one on its own. So we'll take first the plata. The plata is something, okay, a plata generally does not have any knob that controls it. First of all, make sure that in this day and age, that the plata that you're buying is safe, that it is certified with a correct certification. You can check that if you're buying from Amazon. I think in Amazon, they even have that certification on that also. So make sure that all the safety is covered. Number 1. Number 2, a plata by definition doesn't have any knob or control. If it does have a knob or control, cover that knob or control. That needs to be covered before Shabbos, just like we mentioned earlier. Now, do you need to put anything on top of the plata before you put your food? I want to take my food and put it on top of the plata. I want to take my kugel, my rice, my schnitzel. I want to put it there. Do I need to do anything to the plata to make sure that it is covered in any way? This is a machlokas between Rav Moshe Feinstein and Rav Willig / Rav Avad Yosef. Rav Moshe paskins, you don't need to do anything. You could put the food straight from the fridge onto the plata. In a moment, we'll talk about what type of food, right? Because that's also not all food, but we know what type of food. So you can put the food straight onto the plata. And Rabbi Willig, did I get that wrong? Did I do the opposite? Yes, sorry. Yeah, put it directly on. Rav Moshe says you need some type of separation between the plata and the food you put on. Here, foil would not be enough. That's too thin of a layer. You need upside down pots, or we saw in Rav Meir Goldwill, one of the Rosh Yeshiva at Yeshiva University, what his wife did, which was very, very smart, is that she took an insert out from one of the racks from the oven, and because it fits so nicely and it's very much cleaner, she took that and put that onto the plata, and now with a clear separation. That's a machlokas. Rav Willig, Rav Moshe, whichever way you follow is completely okay. Practically, you might want to put that separation there. Why? Rumor has it, these platas can get very hot and they can even burn your food, right? So from a practical consideration, you may want to have that separation there. This way it's a little bit cooler and it protects your food for Shabbos a little bit more. Once we're on the topic of food, what type of food are we talking about over here? So in halacha, we have two different types of foods. We have davar lach and davar yavish. We have liquids and we have solids. There's a fascinating discussion about liquids. Let's say I have a liquid, I heat it up, and then it cools down. So when I heat it up again, am I heating it up like it's brand new? Or is that like, how does that work? Or is it cooked already? Because we have a concept called ein bishul achar bishul. Once something's cooked, you can't cook it again. So when it comes to a piece of chicken, the chicken is raw. I cook the chicken, and now I can never revert it back to its raw state. That's true, right? That's very clear. But when it comes to this, you could argue anatomically, chemically, it's considered cooked, but it doesn't look that way. So we paskin, everybody paskins, that we can reheat up liquids on Shabbos. That is clear. What if it's a mixture of liquids and solids? You have a chicken with sauce. Can I reheat that on Shabbos? The answer is it depends on where you come from. If you are Sephardi, yes, go ahead. If you are eating in a Sephardi's home that Shabbos, kol hakavod, enjoy that gravy. That's completely okay because you're relying on the Shulchan Aruch Psak, because they hold that if the majority of the mixture is solid and there happens to be liquid in there, but it's called chicken, it's not called gravy chicken, it's called chicken with gravy, that is okay. Ashkenazim don't hold this way. The Ashkenazim say we cannot heat up we can't have it heat up the gravy. But what's considered liquid? The bottom line is, let's be honest. If I put a piece of chicken, I take my chicken out of the gravy and I put it into a different tin to put on the plata, liquid's coming out. So is that a problem? No, that's not a problem. That's okay. Where Moshe Feinstein says that's considered a liquid, as long as there's no a solid, and there's no flowing liquid that comes out of it, that is mutter on Shabbos. And we go so far to say also that a cranberry kugel, I think that's like a good example of like, what is that? Cranberry kugel. Again, it might depend on how you make it. If it's too liquidy and too mushy, it might be considered a liquid. But if it's more solid and you put it on and then some liquid oozes out of it, there shouldn't be any guilt over there. That's okay. Where Moshe goes so far to say that if you stick your fork in the chicken to move it to a different thing, and there's either a little bit of sauce that's there, it's still fine. You don't need to take a paper towel and to like dab it and wipe it down. You don't need to do that. Yarei Shemayim, you are. That's amazing. It's amazing, but it's unnecessary. You don't need to do that. Okay. So any questions on this before we go to the other types of heating?
Yeah, you had mentioned something about having soup on Shabbos morning. How do you do that? I missed the way it's done.
So you leave
that's
it
not a liquid.
So what we do is on Friday night, when we divvy out the soup, you keep your hand on it to make sure it doesn't cool down. You ladle out the soup, and then you put it right back onto the plata. And that's how we do it. That's how you do it, and then you can have it the rest of Shabbos. It's very enjoyable, especially in these freezing cold Shabbosim. Okay. Number two, that was number one with the plata. Number two, this is easy. You could put anything you want on top of not anything, the solids that we're talking about, you can heat up. You don't need to do anything. You could put things on top of the cholent pot or on top of an urn to heat it up. That's okay. That is permitted to do.
I have a question there.
Yeah.
Can you reverse the cover of the cholent pot? Because normally you're dealing with a convex surface. It's hard to put something on it. But if you reverse the direction, you'll have something concave. It'll be really easy to heat things on that.
Yeah, Myrna. So first time in my life I ever heard the words convex and concave not used for glasses. Yeah. So I think so. If you take the crock pot off, you do that whole thing and put it back on, that would be okay. That sounds like a good idea.
No, I'm not talking about taking the crock pot off, just taking the cover off and reversing the direction.
There might be a problem with just taking the cover off and reversing it with the food in there.
Take the whole thing off?
Yeah. And then put it back on the other way. Yeah. It's a good idea. Okay, good. The one thing you want to be concerned about with your urn, I mentioned this before with Pesach, and I'm very careful to not say the P word, but when it comes to Pesach, there are ways that you can use the same urn all of Shabbos for all year round. If you don't clean your urn out with vinegar, number one, vinegar is chametz, and you are careful not to use oatmeal to fill it up, and nothing really touches it except for coffee and tea, most likely you'd be able to use your hot water urn all year round. So if you're going to use your urn to heat up your deli roll, then that you should just think about that. Chacham in a barosho, think about that if you do that, you might be causing your urn to be chametzik. What? What's that? Time? Okay, Sarah said it's getting late, so we'll see. We'll just finish up these few points, and we'll see if there's more time for more. What time people could sign off. Now, blechs. So in terms of blechs, Rabbi Eider was our original posek for the Eruv in the community, Shimon Eider. Rabbi Eider explains very nicely that there's three parts of a blech. There is the right on top of the flame. Then there's next to the flame. Those two areas on top of and next to are problematic. You can't take food out of the fridge and put food on in those two areas. The area, because they get too hot. The area that you would be allowed to put it on is area 3, more the periphery. There it would be permitted to put the food onto in that specific area. And again, liquids versus solids. When it comes to the fourth, which is relatively new, is the warming drawer. When it comes to the warming drawer, there are poskim that are against the warming drawer. Rav Shechter, unclear why he's against the warming drawer. Most poskim are not. Most poskim feel this is a very good way to do it. But the bottom line, the reason why is because, on Thursday night, I'm going to cook my food. I'm not cooking food in a warming drawer. So that very act of putting it into something is not an issue. But what you need to do to ensure that the warming drawer is kosher for Hilchos Shabbos. So Rabbi Willig says what you need to do is you have to make sure that you cannot access the buttons or the knobs. Every warming drawer, no warming drawer is created equal. They're all very, very different. But you need to set it up in advance and then tape it down where you can't, not just cover it. Use this principle in Hilchos where it needs to be tape it with something where it's covered very well, and you can't access that board on Shabbos. You don't need to cover the inside of the warming drawer. That's not necessary, and that would be a way to use the warming drawer on Shabbos. Okay, that is.
Warming drawers,
Would the warming door be hatmana? Oh, great question from inside. Someone asked that question, or read us it. Or read, great question. Is the warming door considered hatmana? So hatmana, that's a great question. I'll read. Hatmana, by definition, is something that's covered on all four sides and is mosif heva, mosif chom. It adds heat. So the reason why this is not considered hatmana is the poskim say that it's only something that's really covered, like tightly covered on all four sides. And it's not. This is the loose. You put it in. It's not the roof doesn't fall down on it. It's in there. It's in there. It's resting on something, but it's not completely covered on all four sides. Therefore, it would not be considered hatmana. Okay. Any other questions regarding Bishul on Shabbos? I think for those that ask questions, I think I covered all of those.
I don't know if this is exactly Bishul, but what about the idea of miyad? Like when you're making a salad or something like that, it has to be right before. Or is that too much for tonight?
Okay, yeah. So making salads. Okay, great. So I'm going to stop here for a second. If people want to sign off, you can for sure sign off and don't have guilt. It is being recorded. We don't know who recorded it, but the shul we'll get someone click the recording button. We'll get the recording button. Okay. But Dina, great question. When it comes to making salads, so what issue are we dealing with making salads? We're dealing with the issue of two issues. One is borer and one is tochen. Borer is separating food, separating good from bad or bad from good. Tochen is cutting up vegetables or fruits, things that come from the ground, into small pieces. So let's just take one thing at a time. The rabbi said that you're allowed to separate good from bad if you have three conditions: miyad, biyad, and ochel mitoch psoles. Miyad means you need to be separating it for immediate use. Biyad means you need to use your hand to separate it. A hand means versus using a specific tool that's meant for separating it, like a slotted spoon, for example, that would be prohibited. And number three is ochel, has to be the ochel, the good from the bad. So, for example, if one has, has like, the forks and knives are all mixed together on the table, and now one wants to put them out, that would need to be done miyad, for immediate use, meaning you couldn't set the table before Shabbos in that way if all the forks and the utensils were all mixed together from the night before. Set the table, then go to shul, and then come back. That would be, that's too far off. That's not for immediate use. That would be a problem. Immediate.
Before. When Shabbos started, you said, don't you want to start it right away?
What?
Do you want to set it right away for Shabbos?
Not in that way. You can't.
Okay.
That's only if they're mixed together. So what does miyad mean? What does immediate use mean? It's a machlokes between the Mishnah Berurah and the Chazon Ish. The Mishnah Berurah felt it was like whatever your next task is going to be, so you could do it right before that next task. And the Mishnah and the Chazon Ish said just a half hour. A half hour before is considered within the time frame of miyad. Biyad is using your hand or a fork or knife. Like, it doesn't only mean your hand. Your fork or knife is considered an extension of your hand. Now, when it comes to cutting vegetables, so tochen is cutting foods into small pieces. That's called grinding. It's very unclear. No posek, nobody has a clear definition. It's like you're allowed to cut a cucumber this big, but not this big. It's very unclear what is small, what's big. So the poskim advised to cut it a little bit bigger than you normally do. If you want to cut it the same size, then there's a heter of the Rashba. He writes to cut it right before the meal. Like that principle of Borer, he says you can use this over here too, and cut it the smaller way before the meal. But this only applies, I want to be clear, to things that are gidulei karka, go from the ground. It doesn't apply to chicken or meat. It doesn't apply to cutting bread or crackers, smashing up crackers. Nishna salad, right? What's the minhag with nishna salad? You break the crackers. Or if you want to break pretzels, a common thing now is you put the pretzels in the salad. So you can crush up pretzels on Shabbos. Why is that? Because we have a principle called ein tochen achar tochen. Once, if something was already ground, you can ground it again on Shabbos. So bread was already ground, it was flour, and now was put together again. Now you can take it apart again that way. Why is this important? The one thing you couldn't do this to, you have the pretzel salad, you have the nishna salad, but you also have the taco salad. So the taco salad, you have to be careful because some tacos, some chips are made out of full chips. And by crushing them up, or potato chips, or a potato, they were never ground up originally. To crush those up on Shabbos would be a problem. There are two, right? That's important to note. There's two different types of chips. Don't ask me why I know all these things. Okay, there are two different types of chips. It's important to know for Hilchos Brachos. That's why it's significant. So some chips, tacos, like you're going to make a hadam on them, and other ones you're going to make a shahakol. If you look at the back of the bag, some say made out of corn flour. Corn flour means it was made with corn that was ground up into flour and then reprocessed into chips. That you can crush on Shabbos. That bracha on those chips is a shahakol. Amazing, because they were ground up. But if they're made from whole corn, right? Again, go right after this year, or while I'm talking, go to your pantry and look. If you have chips in there, you will see that there are two different types. Those type that are made out of whole grain corn cannot be crushed on Shabbos, or the chips. Some guys, it's a yeshiva thing that Friday when you take the chulent, you crush up potato chips in it. It's a big problem. You can't crush up potato chips on Shabbos because it's like tochen. So cutting up. So that's Adina. Is that what you meant? Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Does this mean I can't make my salad, my lettuce and my cucumbers and my tomatoes, what peppers, and then go to shul and then come back? I have to wait till I come home from shul with my company and first make it?
I was going to ask Sarah, what does Sarah do?
You're saying if they're very, very big, but even so,
Yeah,
probably not.
it's probably best to do it before, when you come home from shul.
No, the solution is just to bag everything before Shabbos.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Friday.
Yeah, the lettuce is fine. Lettuce
You're good at preparing.
lettuce never gets too small. I wouldn't be concerned with the lettuce issue.
Uh-huh.
Lettuce never gets too small. But the other
But it's
thing,
it's a matter of it being too small. It's a matter of you doing it before. You're not going to eat it right away.
no, it's about being too small. About tochen.
Oh, not about eating it.
Only the way that you could do it is because you do it right before. That's the way around it.
Unless you're doing bow rare, you're separating something.
No, but you're separating by taking the good away from the bad.
Yeah, but I don't know how you doing it by cutting up a pepper.
What do you mean? You wash it, you cut it, you take the middle and you cut away all the good stuff.
Oh, she's yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So then,
That's easy.
right.
That
Yeah.
you
So
do
then,
before?
no, I do that
No.
afterwards. Yeah. Good
You have
point.
to do
Yeah.
everything before. Okay. Oh, well.
Yeah.
I told you shouldn't ask that question, Dina.
No.
I know I'm gonna get him into
We're
trouble.
here
I
to
know.
learn. We're here to learn. We're here to learn.
Sorry.
Good.
I'm still coming to you, Carol. Don't worry.
Good.
You're going to have to wait for the salad now.
Wait, Faye, do you put the food in a warming drawer
I love
before
we should all be able to
Shabbos?
go to shul.
You can't put the food in a warming drawer before Shabbos. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Faye, if Faye's still on, Faye, you want to elaborate on your question? No. Okay. The last question, which is literally 30 seconds. Somebody asked about making ice on Shabbos. So you're allowed to make ice on Shabbos as long as you're making the ice. Not talking about an ice maker. as long as you're making ice for Shabbos. To make ice on Shabbos for after Shabbos constitutes a problem of hachana. Even making like ices, you're making, I don't know, you want to make iced tea pops. Back in my day, I think there were orange juice pops. Friday night, you want to do it for Shabbos day, that's great. Enjoy it. That's awesome. Oneg Shabbos, that's great. But to do that on Shabbos morning for Motzei Shabbos, that's constitutes hachana. If you plan to use it for Shabbos day and you forget to, that's also okay. You meant to do it. That's fine. That would not constitute
Last question
hachana.
about salad dressing, measuring utensils.
Oh, measuring. Let me get back to you. I thank you thank you. This was, we'll stop here for tonight. There were a few more questions. I am happy to find another time. There was a request also to do something kashrus wise also, a different night. So I am happy to come back. It doesn't have to be in this forum of the Rosh Chodesh slot. It could be a different night. Baruch Hashem, Zoom is so easy to jump on and off of. So we can, and someone asked about, cleaning up after the toys in the playroom. We'll have a different time. That's like there's a lot to talk about, unpack within that question itself. So thank you so much. This was really a joy and a privilege to be here to learn with all of you tonight. And it's always important, which Mishnah Berurah writes, it was important to review, especially review Hilchos Shabbos, as it comes up so often and is so significant. And Shabbos is that time where we use it. The Malachos art, it's the ability to reflect on what's important, what's significant in our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. We don't have Sheva, when it comes to, Sheva Brachos, the last beautiful piece of Torah. When it comes to Sheva Brachos, right, we need Panim Chadashos. You need a new face. Every single Sheva Brachos, right? Except for Shabbos. On Shabbos, you don't need Panim Chadashos. Why is that? Because who's the Panim Chadashos on Shabbos? We all are. When it comes to, we're a different person on Shabbos than we are the rest of the week, right? We are the Panim Chadashos. We put on a new face on Shabbos. Even if we had a very difficult and rigorous and challenging and overwhelming week, once you light those candles and you get ready for Shabbos, the Panim Chadashos are on, you have a new face, and you enjoy Shabbos with the people around your table, and you're able to get the light and sense from Kadosh Baruch Hu, able to uplift your meal and talk about important things, the Parsha, Torah, important values, etc. And that's the Panim Chadashos of Shabbos. Thank you so much. Thank you, Orit, Mickey. Thank you, Sarah, and all those that encouraged us to do this Shiur, and wish everybody a Chodesh Tov.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This was great.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Stay tuned for an email for next Monday night for another special Sisterhood program with Sarah and Sarah's mentor, Dr. Judith Kaufman, who is amazing. She is somebody that has served as a mentor to the two of us. We've sought out Eitzah and counsel from and wisdom from since we've known her for the past 15 years. That's Monday night conversation between Sarah and Dr. Kaufman about a lot of different important and relevant.
At what time?
Either 8:15 or 8:30. Okay. Have a good night, everybody.